Hello everyone, so welcome to another overview, this time for Arbaal the Undefeated. So as always I played through the initial turns and I observed the main ideas of the faction which I'm now ready to provide to you. Now this is a brief overview, it should not be considered a full-on in-depth guide, but it will help you out for sure. Now without further ado, let's go play with Arbaal the Undefeated. For our short victory condition, you need to complete 8 challenges of Khorne missions. This is on their specific mechanics for Arbaal, and to occupy, loot, raise or sack 30 different settlements. The reward is the Chainsword, a massive brutal damage focused item that of course helps your character to gain even more blood and more skulls and defeat everyone. Now, this is a rather short campaign. It just depends a bit on the challenges that you go for, but usually that can be completed actually fairly fast, so it's quite a nice introduction to the faction. Now, the long victory requires the short victory, as always, to occupy, loot, raise or sack 60 different settlements, and to complete 15 challenges of Khorne. You also need to destroy the faction of the Ecstatic Legion, so Azazel, and also to perform 8 rituals in the Skull Throne. More on that later. So the reward is +10 to Lord Recruit rank. This is great, not only to ensure good generals, but to facilitate if you want to get any Exalted Bloodthirster upgrades too. Now Arbaal, he's the Undefeated, and he benefits from access to challenges of Khorne, so his unique mechanic, allowing Arbaal to seek out battles to increase Khorne's favor, basically. He has less upkeep for non-demonic units and less construction cost, -50% for mortal, military and defense buildings, as well as -50% time on that. So the opposite of Skulltaker. Arbaal is clearly a faction focused on the mortal side of the Khorne's army roster, and you should enjoy the benefits of it. Of course, nothing wrong with having a few heralds, but the likely focus on your campaign is going to be the Chosen, or the Chaos Warriors. Climate is great, almost without any uninhabitable locations, which means that this is also a very good campaign to attempt global domination on. Clearly one that is intended on bringing Khorne's glory to the whole map. The starting location is very good, actually, very defensible overall. I mean, you can quickly gain the initial province, and then you can have like a decision whether you go to the north or not. There's some legendary lords that I'm pointing out here, like Boris, like Astragoth, you know, like even Tamurkhan nearby, but overall you should be wary of them, but not fearful of them. Arbaal can tackle with them most likely in the very beginning. A typical expansion is then into the Kislev area to later deal with Azazel. This is required for your long victory. However, you may wish to push into the Cathay lands, or you may wish even to push through the Chaos Dwarfs. That will kind of depend on the challenges that you find and whatever challenges you wish to pursue. Always remember that you have that sea lane to use to go to the Greenskins and Chaos Dwarf lands, so you can try to benefit from it. Like, I'm gonna click it here, it goes around to this area, so perhaps you can choose to just use that and set a second colony, let's say a little bit of a colony on the other end. That's up to you. In terms of diplomacy, you're quite in a different position than some other factions. While the main enemies should be from the Order Tide, you're also requested to fight Chaos in your challenges, which does imply you may have little support from your Chaos friends. Therefore, allies will likely be other evil factions, such as the Greenskins, such as the Skaven, or you can try to gain some of their missile units to complement your own forces with any outposts. But really, you should be guiding yourself from the challenges, both in terms of the starting location and issues that you may have, and the diplomacy. In terms of mechanics, Khorne has some interesting ones. So skulls is a currency. It gains mainly from killing enemies or raising settlements. You can use the skulls then to occupy settlements for technology or summoning blood hosts, like this one that I have here. It's kind of depleted, it has fought a lot. Or to give offerings on the Skull Throne. Now, in terms of raising settlements, you have a chance for it to be colonized automatically by your faction. All that you need is that you own at least one settlement in the province, and this chance can later then be increased by certain buildings or techs. Okay? For example, I own the lair of the Troll King, so the location of Traken, sorry if I mispronounce it, will likely become my own even if I don't colonize it later on. In terms of the Skull Throne, is a set of bonuses that you can get by spending skulls. You have 4 tiers, each with stronger benefits, which you also unlock by spending those skulls. So some of the more interesting facts include replenishment for your of movement and replenishment of the units for your faction leader, which is always very helpful, some good control and growth, some passive abilities to all armies, so overall a very nice, wide-ranged set of bonuses. The main notion here is, of course, when to spend the skulls, if you wish to save them or not, of course. So, we also have bloodletting. That's another mechanic. It's tied to your armies. Basically, the more victories you have, the better. Upkeep for that army can get up to minus 40%, replenishment plus 10%, and Khorne corruption and global recruitment also increased here. So overall, that's a nice thing to tackle and to make sure that you keep expanding, and fighting with your armies. Cults. They're spread by your cultist hero and can give some building possibilities that can alter how you approach the enemy. Now, this includes the option to actually instantly teleport your faction leader, so it is great to send like a cultist to a faraway location to quickly port your faction leader there. So you have that option and the challenges to actually do this sort of teleporting around, which is great. It actually helps out a lot in doing a little bit of thematic gameplay, which I also love to see. So, we still have Khorne's Favor, which is a specific currency for Arbaal. It's gained from winning battles, missions, and challenges. You can then use this favor precisely in the challenges of Khorne. You can use them, of course, you can have these fights, the challenges themselves, which is typically to defeat an enemy lord, a specific enemy. And you have the worthy battles, the perfect challenges, and massive ones. I can't recall the specific one. The ultimate bloodbath, yes. That's when typically they are stronger. That's the idea. But then you have also the boons, which you see here on the right side, which it incurs in some cost and upkeep. Okay, of course you can travel to those places, but this incurs into a little bit of an upkeep. Okay, it gives you a nice set of advantages. So the more that you keep going for the challenges, the more you can steamroll, basically. Imagine having all that upkeep reduction, which is always great, the campaign movement range to keep going, and or summoning a blood host after completing a challenge, which is amazing. So overall, that's just a very nice way of playing with Arbaal. In terms of edicts, you have control, reduced chance of plague, and the Khorne corruption. And then we also have the recruitment cost reduction, recruitment rank, and local recruitment capacity. Don't neglect this, sometimes that local recruitment capacity does the difference. Minus upkeep and income from, better income from post-battle loot and income from old buildings. This is great when you're defending as well. Growth and less construction cost and more wins of magic power reserve. So overall, nice set of edicts. These should be remembered for when you're recruiting or you're building, and you have to change accordingly. Okay, especially in the early game, these are quite important to micromanage a little bit. Okay, in terms of the army stances, you have combat trials. This gives you 1 skull per turn for each unit in the army, winds of magic plus 15, unit experience plus 200 per turn, but it does give attrition to your army. Then you have the demonic portal, which is just their encampment, gives replenishment, immunity to attrition. Note that it requires no movement. So overall, it's really good to just ensure that you can keep your conquests. Raiding costs 50 points of movement, enabling replenishment in foreign territory, and immunity to attrition, then the typical ambush ones, and forced march. So overall, this is a typical set. Remember that the combat trials is very good to quickly earn some skulls if you're not in any danger at the moment, and in camp, of course, very useful because it costs no movement points. So let's talk about buildings and research. So you need 7 buildings for maximum military, but more importantly, you need 2 province capitals for it. Now this is because you have 2 types of settlements, the demonic settlements and the mortal settlements. As the name suggests, each allows different buildings that recruit either the demons or the mortal units. Therefore, depending on what units you wish, you should swap the mortal to demonic settlement building. For the most part, of course, with Arbaal, you're going to go into the mortal ones, but it's sometimes not enough, and you just want to have a few demonic ones, so by all means, go for it, especially for some of the heroes, always remember that. Now, tier 3 units, they are already quite insane, to be honest. Exalted Bloodletters, Chosen of Khorne, Chaos Knights, and you got yourself an army in very little time. Of course, tier 4 and 5 just has the best units available to your faction, be it demonic or mortal based, but you do not lack quality at all in the lower tiers. You can go to tier 3 and almost do an entire campaign with just the tier 3 units very easily, especially with the support from your blood hosts, you know. Now the income comes from each military building, so it furthers the importance of keeping that military well fueled. So even if you're in a specific point in the campaign where you don't know exactly what to build, just go for the income buildings, which ironically it's actually the military ones. In terms of infrastructure, you have a growth and casualty replenishment rate building, attrition to enemies, control, and less upkeep. This is great when you're recruiting as well. This is a basic one, income from post-battle loot, faction-wide and raiding, it's so great. And then you have the skulls per turn and Khorne corruption building, always very useful. The more you have about this, let's say they have 10, that's already 400 skulls per turn, so that's great, really. In terms of research, has now been changed. There's a split between military and campaign focus. So military is really well divided into sections for each type of unit, be it infantry, cavalry, or chariots, or monsters, okay? Most interesting choice for me is actually at the research in the campaign side of things. It is subdivided into 6 parts, which deal with either income from battle, loot, raising, or for some bonuses from skulls, you know. So overall, there's each pillar here, the pillar of pride, pillar of wrath, of rage, they deal with specific aspects of the campaign. So if you want to quickly increase the number of skulls, go to the pillar of wrath. If you quickly want better lords and heroes, go to the pillar of rage, you know. A pillar of honor, it's the most generic sort of province benefits like control or corruption or anything. And then you have the pillar of war and prowess, which both deal with the blood hosts, one by the different units and the other one by just giving them some bonuses in battle. In terms of skills, so overall you always have this sort of division in terms of the specific legendary lord or lord skills. As you can see here, you also have the melee or casting skills. Overall, of course, you're going to have only melee for Khorne. Then you have the army skills and of course the blue line below, or the campaign skills, okay? Starting with the blue line, you actually have the casualty replenishment and reduced attrition immediately, like a top priority for me. I always like that. It allows you to vastly expand since your forces quickly restore to full power. You also have reduced upkeep and even further help with the Demons Reforged later on. Of course, you can always pick up Lightning Strike if you like that. I just prefer not to play with Lightning Strike as a preference to increase the challenge, let's say, a little bit. You also can have this income from raiding for a sacking economy, a raiding economy as well, and less upkeep here, and enemy hero success is always great with the added campaign movement. Now, in terms of the red line, it's quite nice, but as it is mostly split among mortal units and demonic units, or kind of splits by role, so that's always good to see. It's always easy to compile good armies without spending too much in the red line. Note that there are differences between the Chaos Lords and Arbaal. Arbaal, even though he's into mortals, he's actually he uses the Herald Redline, so always have that in mind, okay? So remember that. They have different Redline skills, so always remember that. In terms of the heroes, a note to the cultists of Khorne, they provide replenishment as well as having summons, which may be in your interest to keep moving, keep replenishing, keep fighting, and keep winning. In terms of the other heroes, of course, let me just show you there. We do have the Blood Reaper, which increases the mobility. Of course, it's a very good fighter. And we also have the Exalted Hero of Khorne, which increases the training, spreads some controls, so always ensure that you know their main uses. So here are both the Redline skills for the Heralds and the Chaos Lords. Overall, you can see the typical division between monsters and demons and then into mortal units. So they're quite different. You may wish to spend some time familiarizing with them. As an example, Heralds give a little bit more melee defense and physical resistance to mortal units, while Chaos Lords give more armor and spell resist. Just bear that in mind when you're trying to set up your own ideas to fight with, or which units to use in your campaign. But overall, it's a very nice set. So, in terms of Arbaal, he's extremely powerful, leading mortal-based armies, so of course that is the theme and idea here. Some Chosen, some Wrathmongers, some Knights there, some mobility, of course, with that cavalry, or some monsters. It's quite a powerful combination on any situation. So, overall, remember that they are going to get Unbreakable. Unbreakable Chosen? Unbreakable Wrathmongers? Dear God. Okay. Then we have the Heralds. They can go into a few combinations with demons too. A classical Exalted Bloodletters with monsters is a terrific for a fast, in-your-face combination. And then we have some Chaos Lords, which really ensure mortal units are slightly better. Here are two strategies. It involves some Minotaurs as well for anti-large, and the other just relying on brute force, really. And in terms of the Blood Speakers, which we see next, they are, sorry, the slide didn't come on too soon. So, Blood Speakers, they enhance the new units. The Skull Reapers, Wrathmongers, they give some speed and armor piercing, which is actually excellent for fast units, hence that second army idea, very quick tier 3 army, which is very focused army on just being really fast against any foe, of course. So, overall, that's a nice idea actually for a second army to keep it thematic. Should you upgrade to Exalted Bloodthirsters, then Khorne demon units obtain some nice barrier, which is always nice, and then you can even use them with mortal units, it's fine. Primarily you're trying to use just the Exalted Bloodthirster in itself, and maybe some flying support for other armies. So overall, that's the sort of idea that I want you to have in mind. A late game progression, a starting army to late game progression example that I always like to give. So, of course, going from Chaos Warriors to Chosen, it's very simple, very straightforward. You only focus really on one Redline skill, which buffs almost everything from the mortal side. So you can start off by having focusing that army, going a lot into the mortal units, then upgrading the Skull Reapers units and just upgrading the infantry units overall. And then as soon as you get to tier 5, you can upgrade that army and just leave those smaller, lower tier units to someone else. But overall, everything uses the same Redline from start to finish, which is why it's so great to just keep upgrading very easily. It feels straightforward, you know. And then I'm adding those 3 single entities. You can actually add some Bloodthirsters if you wish. It's really up to you. But overall, I just wanted to keep it with the theme of the U units from the DLC. So Arbaal is a bit the opposite of Skulltaker, with a very mortal unit focused campaign. Of course, you can still use demonic units, but the theme is rather into those mortals, so embrace it. Now, the faction suffers a bit from having no magic at all, you know, so if you're a magic enthusiast, you may want to stick to a shorter victory. Still, there is a lot of fun just having some of the best melee units in the game to be even more increased, can you imagine? Now, growth, it can be a pain, as well as income, so it is encouraged that you use either upkeep reductions or a sack, raise, loot economy. Even if you're in the red for some turns, don't worry, keep fighting. Like you see me there, I'm still in the red, I'm not worried about it. I just keep fighting and it should clear up very easily. Overall, you gotta insist on your on the stuff that you can hear from the research as well, because those will increase a lot. Growth per region is really great, so that you can always have your provinces really well completed, very fast. So it's a very it doesn't seem like a rush faction, but it is. It is a faction to rush really fast, higher tiers, and then just dominate the whole map with. In terms of units, you have great and powerful infantry, average missile choices, great monsters and single entities, good cavalry and chariots. You lack some missile options, but you do lack, of course, magic. Replenishment is very good. Probably one of the best factions around as well for it. Make sure you check for the proper mechanics to increase it, and always be looking for some important synergies between Edicts, buildings, and bloodletting for a heavy upkeep reduction. So overall, just be mindful of all those synergies when playing Arbaal the Undefeated, and I believe it's now blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne.